So good evening and welcome to the 2023 University Lecture. My name is Harvey Sidiou and I'm the Deputy Rector of UNSW Canberra. Unfortunately, the Rector is not here at the moment. She's rushing back from the Parliament House, meeting the Deputy Prime Minister. So you will have me to introduce the speaker today. Before I continue, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm speaking to you today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us both in person and online. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you are all joining us. Now, a bit of background. The University Lecture has been a key event for UNSW Canberra for over 30 years. And over the time, it has attracted a wide range of fascinating speakers. The lecture has always been incredibly popular amongst UNSW staff and students, and it's great to see so many of you here today. So thank you for attending tonight's lecture. And tonight, you are here for something really special. Delivering this year's University Lecture is Hugo Toovey. Hugo is a 31-year-old Army captain, a two-time cancer survivor, and a mental health advocate. Hugo is also the founder of 25 Stay Alive, which is a preventive health movement that educates and inspires young people to be proactive about their health. Hugo is a graduate from UNSW Canberra, having a Bachelor of Business from here in 2012. Looking at Hugo here tonight on stage, you will see him later, he looks like your typical everyday young Australian. But let me assure you, the last 10 years or so of Hugo's life have been anything but special, but typical. He's special though. In 2013, at the age of 21, Hugo was diagnosed with testicular cancer. The treatment of this included the removal of the affected testicle, surgery to remove an abnormal lymph node, and months of chemotherapy. Then, in 2018, Hugo was diagnosed with bowel cancer, which required more major surgeries and several weeks in hospital. Not only has Hugo survived both testicular cancer and bowel cancer, but he has also had ongoing battles with his mental health. A topic you'll soon discover he's very passionate about. And another challenge thrown in his way, Hugo has recently been diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and he is actively treating that disease. Yet, despite all of this adversity, Hugo is incredibly determined to use what he has gone through to save the lives of others. Tonight, Hugo will share with you his remarkable story of resilience and overcoming adversity, a lesson that all of us should hear carefully. Hugo truly is the embodiment of just how precious life is, and his words tonight will show why every single one of us should not take it for granted. I'm so excited to hear from this remarkable young man, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Captain Hugo Toovey to the lectern to deliver his university's lecture. Hugo.
Thanks so much for having me tonight, ladies and gents. It's a real privilege, I must admit. Having been in that seat, feels like not that long ago. I do have a bit of that imposter syndrome for standing up here, and all the previous lectures that some of you have heard over the last couple of years, and those who have heard them before that. It's one of those things that I've taken a pretty unique career path. There's no way sitting in those seats a number of years ago, I would have thought I'd be here in these rather unique circumstances sharing my story. But I must admit, I'm also quite proud to be here tonight. I'm proud to be joined by my wife. Interestingly enough, I've shared my story a number of times, but this is the first time that Amber's heard the full story. So hopefully I'll just try and avoid looking at her so I don't get too emotional. But I think it's not really working, this clicker, but that's all right. Here we go. I'll just go to the next one. Just before we came in here tonight, we had a little bit of a tour around ADFA, and it brought back some fond memories. And before I journey in some of the adverse 10 or so years, a bit of an introduction on who I am, and thank you for the introduction. But I joined ADFA straight from school, like I'm sure a lot of you here tonight. No family history of the Army. Sounded like a pretty good idea at the time, and here I am all these years later, so obviously they've done something right. I'm currently a captain at Headquarters Forces Command in Sydney, and I'm on promotion at the end of the year, being posted to the Amphibious Task Force at HMAS Cuttable. Once again, something I'd never thought, given what I've gone through, I'd still be serving. I dug up this particular photo. So I'm having a bit of an issue with this clicker. Ooh. Bear with me. An old div photo. And it brought back some very great memories. And I was actually joking before we came in here, and they said, wonder what their changes are. And I said, one big change, I think, when we went through the beers was still about $2, which I think that's probably changed. But what you don't realise is a lot of the people you're here tonight with, sitting next to, those in your div, I understand a big chunk of you are now at UC whilst there's some renovations going, but a lot of the people you're sitting next to, without truly appreciating it, they're going to go on to be some of your friends for life. They really will. And might even be easier to come over here. And those guys on the screen, it's quite a special photo. They're some of my best mates. In fact, 2 of those guys were groomsmen at my wedding. A couple of those guys I was only in New Zealand with a couple of weeks ago. But unfortunately, my best mate, who you don't see pictured in that photo, his plaque's just out there. And I must admit, I got a little bit emotional just before I came in here, and I looked at the plaque with Amber, and his name was Midshipman Peter Bark. And Pete Bark, as soon as I met Pete, he had that cheeky grin, big smile on his face. And from day one, we shared a really special bond. We became best mates. We were next door to each other for a couple of years in the dorm rooms. But unfortunately, Pete was struggling with depression. I didn't really understand, as a young 20-year-old, the significance of what he was going through. Although I knew he was struggling, I didn't really understand how bad it was. And I vividly remember one particular morning, Pete stormed into my room like he always did, gave me a big hug, and I said, Pete, mate, piss off, I'm getting ready for uni. Little did I know that would be the last time that I'd ever see Pete. And later that afternoon, he tragically took his own life. And I understand there's people in here who have gone through a similar tragedy in the last year or so. And it's one of those things that, you know, being a pallbearer for your best mate at 20 years of age, even to this day, I can't really wrap my head around it. But the reason I like starting off talking about Pete is because I've got no doubt that Pete would be proud of what I'm doing. I've still got a great relationship with Pete's mum, Maria, and we often talk about what Pete would be doing now. And with that being said, it's one of those things that I believe his legacy is absolutely living on. And I always love talking about Pete before any presentation because it really signifies the importance of why we talk about these things. There are real people like Pete and like many others behind these terrible statistics we often hear about. But as a result of Pete's tragic passing, made a bit of a pact with my mates who you just saw pictured there. And we made this pact of, we said, you know, if one of us is going through something, if one of us is struggling, let's make sure that we're there for each other. For as long as we live, we've got each other's backs, we're checking on each other. And that pact was pretty special, and all these years later, it's exactly what we do. And I got no doubt that Pete would want us to continue living our lives. And as a result of Pete's passing, we became even closer. As I mentioned, the mates, the friends you're sitting here tonight with, that bond became even closer, and eventually graduated ADFA, the end of 2012, for all the third year Army training officers. I was just chatting to one before. You kind of finish ADFA and you go across the hill and embark on another pretty full-on 12 months. But at that stage, I was probably the fittest and healthiest I'd been in my whole life. It was June 2013, 18th of June to be specific. I had 6 months left at RMC before graduating as a young lieutenant. 6 months after 4 years of military training. You know, you're really on the home stretch. And I remember 18th of June giving my old man a call to wish him happy birthday. And I said, on a completely unrelated side, and I said, Dad, I've got this weird lump on my right testicle. What do you reckon? And he said, well, mate, how long's it been there for? And I said, well, probably over 6 months. Just picture a little frozen pea, a frozen pea-sized lump on my right testicle. I knew it was there, but like a lot of young blokes especially, we get very good at the old, you know, she'll be right, brush it under the carpet. And I remember vividly going on Google, lump on right testicle, and would find the least severe thing I could find and say, oh, that's what it is. And then my dad said, mate, don't be an idiot, go to the doctor. Worst part is, as we know, being in the military, we have access to MOs and GPs. And I was at Longtown Company and my doctor was maybe 30 metres from my room, yet I still put that off for 6 months. And it wasn't until my old man prompted me to go to the doctor. He had a feel around, said, mate, it's probably nothing, but let's send you off for an ultrasound. Sent me off to an ultrasound in Canberra. Didn't think much of it. Went back to continue my day. Got a call back from the doctor. And he said, mate, I'm sorry to say, you've got testicular cancer. Now, that was a hard thing to hear because you need to remember I was, as I said, the fittest and supposedly healthiest I'd been in my whole life. Yet not only did I have testicular cancer, me putting off that little frozen pea-sized lump meant the cancer spread all through my body. And at 21 years of age, you don't really expect to hear that. I felt pretty normal, yet I had cancer through my body. But I'm a big one for testicle chat. I love talking about testicles. And there was this moment where I'd just been told I had cancer all through my body, needed to have surgery to remove the testicle. And the surgeon said, mate, before we book in for all of this, he said, important question, do you want a fake testicle? And I thought, all right, sounds pretty good. I was a single bloke at that stage, bit of normality, let's go for it. And he said, right, and I kid you not making this up. He turned around with a briefcase, flipped it open, and there are about 5 or 6 different shapes, sizes of fake nuts. And I thought, this is bloody weird. And I remember getting about three in, and I thought, well, this one feels good. And he said, popular choice, sir. I said, we'll go with this one. Let's go with this. And he said, right, now what size do you want? I thought, excuse me? He said, what size do you want? I said, I don't know, let's just match it up with the other one. Isn't that pretty normal? And he said, well, some blokes actually want a bigger fake nut, which I'm not sure why, but I won't do it tonight because it's very inappropriate. But I've got a bit of a drunken party trick called real or fake. And now I wish I kind of got that bigger fake nut. And I actually shared that story at a Movember function last year. I'm a Movember ambassador, and I shared that story. Walked off, and this guy came up to me and said, "Mate, thanks for sharing your story. So nice to meet you. I've also got a fake nut." I said, "Bloody good to meet you, mate." And he said, "Have you ever tried the lantern?" I thought, "No, the hell's the lantern?" He said, "Get your light, put it up against your fake nut, and see what happens." I thought, this is brilliant. So I went straight to the toilet, got my iPhone out, and it's like this beacon of light. It really is impressive, but I'm, that's just another time, I think. But it was... It's interesting, though. There are different ways we can have conversations. Movember are brilliant at it. They kind of have a humorous way in talking about these things. And since talking about, my fake nut, what I've gone through, playing real or fake with some mates, I've had mates and mates of mates who go, "Mate, good to see you last night. Gee, it got a bit out of hand at the end of the night. Hey, just a quick one, though. I'm just wondering, I've got this weird little thing on my testicle. What do you reckon?" I say, "Mate, thanks for sharing that. Go off to your doctor." And as a result, I have had a fair few feel-good stories. In particular, one particular soldier heard that sort of story, prompted him to go get checked. He ended up having testicular cancer. He got diagnosed early. Recently, last year, got promoted to corporal. He reached out to me. He's now living a happy, healthy life. Moral of the story is, if nothing else from this presentation, hopefully there'll be a few key takeaways. Tonight, and I guarantee it, there'll be guys in here doing it. When the shower, when it's hot and steamy, normalise these chats, have a feel around, be proactive with your health, be in tune with your body. No different for females as well. Breasts, that same logic, any freckles, weird moles on your skin, but just having that mindset of being proactive with your health, of knowing what your normal is, and if you have any lumps or bumps or something that's not quite right, go off to your doctor. Pretty simple, right? And these messages can literally save lives, and I have had some amazing feel-good stories. But unfortunately, as I said, the cancer did spread. So what would have been a pretty routine surgery meant that I had to embark on months of chemotherapy, pretty invasive surgeries and the like. It was a weird moment because I delayed the chemotherapy, finished my training at Duntroon, cancer all through my body. I didn't hardly tell any of my classmates. Continued doing, stab ops and field exercises, even though I had cancer through my body. The reason for that is because I still wanted to graduate after 4 years of training, and I wanted to earn that graduation. I didn't want to be gifted the graduation because, you only got there because of cancer. But what that does to your mental health, it's quite significant. And I probably underestimated that at the time. But that being said, I'm pretty proud that I still did graduate. And I'm pictured there with my twin brother, Max. Canberra, graduation parade, family flown in from Adelaide. Proud moment. But it was a bittersweet feeling. Because on one hand, I've just graduated, young lieutenant, whole career ahead of me. But on the other hand, I was about to embark on chemotherapy back in Adelaide as little as 6 days later. My twin brother shaved my head, and I commenced about 4 or 5 months of chemo and got quite sick. The photo you see in the middle, I actually don't have many photos of me going through chemo. And the main reason for that is I felt really embarrassed in how I looked. I felt really vulnerable. I was 22. Looked at myself in the mirror and thought, this is not the person I know. And that smile you see, I got very good at putting on a smile, putting on a front, putting on a mask. It became a bit of a trend over the coming years. I felt like I had to be that super optimistic, positive person all the time. But as we know, not talking about these things can actually make it a lot worse. And eventually, after about four or so months of chemotherapy, there are still some remaining lymph nodes. They then had to have what's called a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. It's about a 10-hour operation to remove all lymph nodes. They only do about 1 or 2 of these a year. I was in ICU for a couple of weeks, hospital for a month, but then I got the news, you're cancer-free. We got it all, mate. Now, for those in the room or those streaming online who have been impacted by cancer either directly or indirectly, it's quite significant when you're told you've got cancer and then you're cancer-free. It's a really profound moment. And I remember hearing those words, you're cancer-free. And I knew that the recovery, the follow-on treatments, I knew that would come. But for me, knowing that they got the cancer, that was all that mattered. And I just started taking those small wins, walking 100 meters, passing a bloody BFA, looking to get medically upgraded, 6-month clear scan, 12-month clear scan, taking those small wins. Because at the end of the day, life goes on. And it was embracing those wins and embracing those moments in my life that at one stage I thought I may not have had. Middle photo there, I'm once again, proud moment. I was promoted to captain at the end of 2017. I earned that promotion. I was upgraded. I was physically fit. I was mentally fit. I earned that promotion, and it was a really proud moment being with my family, being with Amber, and once again, feeling like cancer didn't define me. We then got posted to Brisbane, 9 FSB. And I guess the cherry on top was when I got my 5-year all-clear scan for testicular cancer. A lot of cancer survivors strive towards that 5-year all-clear scan. Remember the feeling well, popped open a bloody bottle of champagne, we celebrated. I was 26. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt a sense of happiness, a sense of freedom, and not having that anxiety that comes with something like cancer, the surveillance, the checkups. But unfortunately, life doesn't always go to plan. That feeling of happiness, freedom, was pretty short-lived. And only months after receiving that 5-year all-clear scan, I was lined up for a deployment. My military career was on track. Once again, life was going to plan, or so I thought. And all of a sudden, my stomach started playing up. And now I've always had a bit of an inconsistent bowel ever since I was a kid. But this was worse than my normal, right? My normal's different to your normal, different to a lot of people's normals. But this was worse than my normal. And I remember saying to Amber at the time, something's not quite right. I was getting up during the night, increased bowel movements. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. And I said, you know what? I'm going off to the doctor. This had been going on for about 2 weeks. I guess in one positive way, I was almost like the opposite of young 21-year-old Hugo. I was almost a hypochondriac, and in a way that was a good thing because it prompted me to go to the doctor. And I went to the doctor, did some tests, had a colonoscopy, which for the more experienced people in the room have probably had a colonoscopy. It's a pretty simple procedure, camera up the bum, 15-minute little sleep, wake up. The best part, you get your little turkey sandwich, biscuit and your tea. Brilliant. And I remember just sitting there, didn't think anything of it. And Terry was my gastroenterologist. Terry came over to me and he said, Hugo, you had a couple nasty polyps. I thought, that's pretty weird. I hardly even knew what a polyp was. He said, look, it's probably nothing. Heard that a few times before. But we'll send it off for a biopsy. Let's see you in 2 weeks for a review. I remember literally getting my phone out, 2 weeks. Went to work the next day, dressed in my army uniform, typing away at my desk. And I got a call from Terry's receptionist. And she said, Hugo, the results came back. Terry needs to see you. And I thought, yep, I'm due to see him in 2 weeks. She said, no, he needs to see you this afternoon. You know, when you get that sinking feeling, that sick feeling in your stomach, we've all had it, where you just feel sick. You can hardly talk. You just feel like you need to vomit. You just feel so sick. I just had that feeling. When you've got a specialist requesting to see you, typically it's not good news. And Amber is a nurse, and fortunately Amber just finished her shift. She came to the appointment with me. Once again, my default, that smile, that front, pretending I was completely fine, yet beneath it all I was really struggling. And I remember sitting in the waiting room. Terry walked out with this somber look to his face. And he called us both in, and he turned his computer screen around and said, "Amber, Hugo, I'm sorry to say, you've got bowel cancer." And that was 2 months after I just got given that 5-year all-clear scan, sitting there at 26, just when my life was going to plan. I was told I had bowel cancer, and that was really difficult. You know, I felt like I knew everything there was about testicular cancer, but bowel cancer was an entirely new cancer. And he said this really powerful comment, will always stick with me. He said, "Mate, I know this is hard." He said, "But the only silver lining is that there's every chance that testicular cancer saved your life." Testicular cancer saved your life. And he's absolutely spot on. What he means by that is there's no way, if it wasn't for young 21-year-old naive Hugo who put off that little frozen pea-sized lump for over 6 months and the cancer spread through the body, fast-track 5 years, there is no way after my bowels playing up a bit, I would have gone off to the doctor, I would have had some tests, I would have had a colonoscopy, I would have been told that I had bowel cancer, but I caught it early enough. And there is no way, or very unlikely, I'd be standing here tonight, even sharing my story. Something like bowel cancer, it now kills more young Australians aged 25 to 45 than any other cancer. It's not an older person's cancer. These things impact each and every one of us. But I knew I had a fighting chance because I got it early. But he said, "We got to act quick." He already booked me in for surgery. And I remember leaving those doctor's rooms. And I was about 2 meters in front of Amber in my army uniform, and I just burst into tears. It's almost like that mask, you know, that weight, I just couldn't hold it. And I just burst into tears. And I remember getting in the car and calling my parents. And I'm not a father myself. But I remember calling my old man, and he's not an emotional guy. And I just said, he didn't even know I was having a colonoscopy. And I just said, he said, "How you going, Doogie?" He calls me Doogie. And I said, "Dad, I've just been told I had bowel cancer." And I could hear him get really emotional. Because something like cancer, mental illness, it doesn't just impact you, right? It's got this ripple effect. It impacts your family, your partner, your friends, your colleagues. And although I couldn't help it, I felt like I was causing Amber, my family, so much pain. And that made me more withdrawn. It made me put on that mask even more. And it made me not talk about what I was going through, because I felt like I had to be that pillar of strength all the time. But at the end of the day, I'm so grateful that I've got such a supportive and loving wife, family. I'm so grateful the Army supported me over the years. There is no way I'd be here today in this position if it wasn't for all that support. And what I soon realised is you need that support. And I often say to people, if you don't do it for yourself, if you're being, an ignorant bloke and you're not going after the doctors, do it for your family, because you're all in this together. And it's something I sort of slowly realised, is that they're there to support me. The Army's there to support me, and it's something that really helped me go moving forward. But unfortunately, after a year of surgeries, removing part of my bowel, immunotherapy for 6 months, different medications, steroid treatments and the like. Geez, I bloody even went vegan for 6 months. I tried everything. It got to about 12 months down the track and my specialist said, mate, I'm sorry, mate, but there's still signs of cancer. It's not a matter of if the cancer will spread beyond the bowel, it's a matter of when. Pretty difficult thing to be confronted with in your mid to late 20s. And my last option really was to remove my entire large bowel, my colon and my rectum, which means that it didn't give the chance for the cancer to spread beyond the bowel. I knew it would change my life forever, but I knew that if they could get rid of the cancer, it would give me a fighting chance. Now, that next month or so in hospital was probably the darkest days I've had. I lost about 22 kilos. I couldn't eat and drink for about 3-4 weeks. I was kept alive on what's called a TPN pouch to just give me the nutrients to live. It was touch and go. I had emergency surgeries. But each and every day, I'd have people like Amber coming to the hospital, smile on her face, supporting me. But each and every day, as soon as Amber left, I'd often be in tears most days, and I'd find drugs to keep me going, to numb the pain. But the thing is, I was doing everything I could for my physical health, everything I could for the cancer, everything I could for the pain. I had doctors standing around with clipboards. They were putting me on new different medications, new different treatments, but I was doing nothing for my mental health. And the reason I share this photo on the right, and it's quite a vulnerable photo for me to share, is because physically you can see I'm unwell. I've lost a lot of weight. I've got my stoma bag. I've got the scars. But I look at that face and I feel so sorry for the person that I was and how unhappy I was. But some of the pain that I was experiencing with my mental health was more painful than some of the physical pain. So for those who have never experienced mental illness, use that as a bit of a comparison to know that, like my good mate Pete all those years ago, and like people I'm sure in this room who have gone through your own battles with your mental health, it can be extremely debilitating. But just like I was doing to try and get rid of the cancer and everything I could for my physical health, I knew I had to start prioritizing my mental health. The other reason I share that photo is I've still got a picture on my phone, on my notes page, with that exact photo and a saying, which I remember my mum sent me many years ago. It's a famous quote, and it says, "This too shall pass." This too shall pass. Some of you have probably heard of that. And to this day, I still have days where I am in extreme discomfort, extreme pain. Sometimes it feels like when I go to the bathroom, it's like passing a razor blade. But in those moments when I'm in the bath with Epsom salts going, I've taken a painkiller tablet and it's 2 a.m, I often reflect on those times and I compare myself to myself. I compare myself to a time where I got through significant adversity, even when I didn't think I could. And it gives me that hope that I'm going to get through it again. So rather than comparing yourself to what everyone else is doing in this world, I guarantee that each and every one of you, if you haven't already, will go through your own challenges, your own adversity in life. But as long as you have a bit of that hope in knowing you can get through it, even in those painful times when you don't think you can, that's what gets me through. And I think it's important to reflect on those times, because for me, I'm proud of how far I've come, standing here today and looking at those moments. And for me, when I started prioritizing my mental health, things started to look up. I could slowly start to have a sip of water, slowly start to eat. And like those many years ago, I started taking those small wins. It's crazy how much we take for granted, but when you're in those times in your life, the smallest things you appreciate so much more. There was a time when I got my stoma, which is essentially your small bowel sticking out of your stomach, and I could not even look down at it for about 3 or 4 days. And the stoma nurse in hospital said, "Hugo, I know this sounds weird, but I recommend giving him or her a name." I thought, that is pretty bloody weird. And she said, "I promise you, you'll develop a bit of a relationship with your stoma. And it makes it so much easier if you give them a bit of a personality." And at the time, I don't know why, but I was watching, you know that movie Ted with the talking teddy bear? Hilarious movie. He's got a bit of a smart-ass talking teddy bear, strange concept for a movie, but he's got this love and hate relationship with his mate, Mark Wahlberg's character. I'm like, how fitting is that? I've got this thing that's going to piss me off at times, and don't get me wrong, Ted pissed me off a lot. But there'll be times when, you know what, I'll get around the little guy, and the mindset and the shift in first not being able to look down at Ted, it was almost like a disability, to realising that, you know what, Ted saved my life. It's amazing how much that mindset can change your way of thinking. And for me, it's something that I'm pretty proud of. And I remember putting little smiley faces on him. I gave him little Movember outfits when it was Movember month. And I'd go to the beach and I'd have kids running up to me and saying, you know, "What's that weird thing on your stomach?" And I'd proudly tell them it was Ted and the fact that Ted saved my life. And then when there was a moment to reverse Ted, the human body is pretty remarkable. There's a moment to reverse Ted. I was almost a bit hesitant. So much so I've still got some of his outfits at home. It's like when your kids move out of home, you don't want to really just throw everything out. So I've still got some outfits at home for him. And when I reversed Ted, they created a fascinating, with my last remaining part of my small bowel, they stretch it down, staple it on itself. So it's like a J shape, stitch that to my anus area. And over time, that adapts and almost becomes your small bowel, large bowel, rectum, all in one trifecta. So at the start, I had to learn to go to the toilet again, some incontinence issues. I'd go to the bathroom 20 times a day. But over the course of the next couple of years, it slowly expands, it adapts. And, you know, in my peak, I think I got below 10 times a day, which is a massive win for me. And there might be a stage where I have to welcome Ted back into my life. And I remember when my specialist said, "Mate, we may have to welcome Ted back." I said, "No worries at all." And I honestly meant that, knowing that I've gone through that and I've still got his outfits, which is great. The next video I'm about to play is basically 2 years after those events. Now, once again, life was going to plan. I was fit, I was healthy. Like I said, I got my bowel movements to 1 to 10. I was doing pretty well. I was doing lots of this advocacy work. I was sharing my story. I was getting out and about. I was proud of the unique path I'd taken. And this is a short snippet of this time last year, of when I was on Sunrise. I was sharing my story. I was talking about men's health, but in particular, what I'm talking about now.
I guess I'm moving proof that it's something so much cancer or economic tourists doesn't discriminate. And I think I always say to my mates, like, you'd rather be safe than sorry, right? So having those annual checkups with the GP, or if something not quite right and knowing you're normal, going off to that GP, getting checked, can make a difference. So I'm a big one for advocating for that and encouraging my mates or anyone to be proactive with their health.
You know, it's just fantastic to hear you talk, because you didn't have to do this. You don't have to be spreading as lessons. You've got a lot going on. It's really powerful stuff.
Now, the thing with life, as I've learned the hard way, is that it's full of unexpected surprises. And just as, once again, I was doing really well, I'd just been on live TV. I remember leaving that, Amber called me up, and I was very proud of what I was doing. And once again, for the first time in a long time, I felt happy. But things don't always go to plan, and none of us truly know what's around the corner. So I think there's just a gentleman up there, which... Life is full of unexpected surprises, and I think, for me, the significance of being in hospital, it has taught me a lot about resilience. Like I said early on, that smile that I got so good at putting up, that mask, that front, I felt like I was better equipped in dealing with adversity. And the very next day, after being on live TV, sharing my story, the early hours of Monday morning, I started to experience some significant pain. My bowels were playing up, took some painkillers, nothing helped, and I thought this isn't right. And essentially what happened is, because I've had so many bowel surgeries, is my last remaining part of my bowel twisted around itself with the scar tissue. It caused a bowel obstruction, which eventually caused bowel necrosis, which is essentially just black, dead bowel. And I was very sick. So my wife rushed me off to emergency. My surgeon, who had done multiple operations, rushed in on his day off. And then he operated on me to remove the bowel. And he said, if I'd waited even 24 more hours, we would have had a 100% mortality rate. 24 more hours. And here I was, the morning before, sharing my story on live TV, feeling great. Life is full of unexpected surprises. This next video I'm playing essentially is the next 5-6 weeks in hospital this time last year. But the smile you see and the thumb up you see, that was genuine. Once again, I felt I was better equipped in facing these challenges.
And we'll rise up, like the waves, we'll rise up, in spite of the ache, we'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
None of us know what's around the corner. I don't know what the next week holds, the next month holds, the next year holds. But no one does. There are people in this room right now that are going to go through their own adversity and their challenges. And for me, it's how you can react to those challenges. And over the years of ups and downs, I eventually realised that I can make good of what I'd gone through. Instead of playing that victim card, life sucks, why me? I can make the best of a bad situation. Use what I've gone through to help others, whether that's in uniform, whether it's the work I do in the health and welfare space in the army, whether it's growing an extremely seedy mow every Movember, which my wife made me get rid of for our wedding last year, but that's okay, understandable. Or whether it's doing bowel cancer walks or being here tonight. I don't have to be here tonight. I don't have to do any of these things. But by sharing my story, once again, this is just my story, and I'm sure a lot of you have your own stories. For me, it's a form of therapy, knowing that I can help others. And one of the proudest things I've done is created a movement called 25 Stay Alive. I partner with an amazing GP. I'm in early talks with the government at the moment about how we can kind of focus more on the preventative healthcare movement. I go to schools, football clubs, and essentially it's all about not waiting until it's too late, being proactive with your health, realising that we're not invincible. And unfortunately, I've met some amazing people through these endeavours. And I did this mental health podcast called Behind the Uniform, and that was stemmed from my own experiences when I was speaking about putting that mask on, that face, that front. But behind all that, behind the mask, behind the uniform, there was a lot going on. It was about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations. And one of my favourite guests was a guy called Moses Enriquez. Looking at Moses, seeing Moses, Mozzie, he plays cricket for Australia. On the outside, it looks like he's doing pretty well in life. But as Mozzie talks about, there'll be some days after training for his country, his wife's at home, he's got money, he's got a young kid, he's got a beautiful dog, where he would often burst into tears in his car. And the thing is, something like mental illness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're an Australian cricketer, it doesn't matter if you've gone through a couple bouts of cancer, it doesn't matter if you're a training officer at ADFA. It doesn't discriminate. And to realise that is extremely powerful. And this next little video from Mozzie, he shares this really powerful clip about what helped him get through his darkest days, but as humans, what we can take out of that.
G'day, I'm Moses Enriquez, Australian cricketer, and I'm about to take you through my mental health journey. And this fella, Morton, he was a big part of it. I think it got its absolute worst. I think it would have been 2017, 2018. Yeah, I distinctly remember, during that time, actually having a genuine, almost fear of putting the uniform on. And then once it was on, it was almost like I was in robot mode, like just going through the motions. I think, when you've got, I don't know what it is about dogs, but that unconditional love that aura of unconditional love, and no matter how your day's gone or how his day's gone, when you open that door, he just comes up and he jumps up, and that the constant love and care that they show for you. To know that that I meant something really important to him, a lot of the time just kept me going as well, because I think sometimes as human beings we forget to show the people we care about like how much they mean to us. So there's probably a few lessons to be learned there actually, because I can tell you now, this big fella down here, he never forgets to show me how he feels about me when, if I haven't seen him for 5 or 10 minutes, he's just so excited to have me back.
Mozzie says that comment at the end. We often forget to tell those who mean the most to us, those closest to us, how much they mean to us. And it's such a powerful comment. We're all guilty of not reaching out to our mates, of not calling our mum, of not connecting with those in our lives that we're closest with. And I bloody love dogs, and you see Mozzie's reaction with relationship with dogs. Dogs will come up and greet you at the door. We need to have that same mindset as humans, and let's not take those things for granted. And just out of interest, we're in a sort of that vulnerable space. I just love a show of hands. Show of hands who here in their life has at some point in their life struggled with their mental health. Just raise your hand, show of hands. There's probably a significant amount of people that just put their hand up. And what that highlights is that if you're one of those people that put your hand up, if you're one of those people that are struggling now, or if you've got a friend or someone in your life that's struggling, is to know that you're not alone. If we all focus in on our unique little village, those connections, those people in our life, and we're there for each other, you realise you do not have to struggle or worry alone. And I know there have been a few things I've said over the last sort of 30, 40 minutes, which may be a bit triggering. But if you have anything I have hit home to you, please, after this, come up, say good day, reach out to one of your mates, give your mum, give your dad, give your brother, give someone a call tonight. Start that conversation. As I said, I'm one person sharing my story tonight, being vulnerable, standing up here tonight. But each and every one of you from tonight, with Are You OK Day tomorrow, use that as a perfect opportunity. We all have that opportunity to create that ripple effect. Start having these important conversations. And if nothing else, when you leave here tonight, just remember that life is so bloody precious. Often we take the smallest things for granted. But I can promise you now, none of us know what's around the corner. Hug your mates and make the most of the opportunity that you've been given at this amazing academy. And like I said, I've got many fond memories, and I'm really proud to be here tonight. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said, having Amber, my wife, here as well, it means a lot, and it's very special for me. So once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Captain Toovey. And thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening, students and staff, distinguished guests, and those streaming this lecture from across Australia. Sir, your experiences and your lessons on resilience and overcoming adversity will resonate with us for the rest of our careers as junior officers, especially your guidance on checking up on our own physical and mental health, and that with hope and perseverance, our own challenging times that we will eventually face will eventually pass. Myself and the rest of the Academy, thank you for your words tonight and your time. Thank you.
Appreciate that, mate. Cheers. Appreciate that. Now, there is a bit of time for questions. I know a lot of you have to eventually run off, and some of you going to UC and the like. I will also be staying around afterwards if you want to chat, and also if there's something you don't want to talk about tonight, or there's something that's hit home, or there's something that you want to either ask or talk about, feel free to reach out directly. If I can't answer it, I'll absolutely point you in the support services or the directions of people that can. But is there any questions? And there'll definitely have to be one, otherwise I'll just stand here very awkwardly and just staring at you all. But is there a question? Yes.
I wanted your advice. You've spoken here tonight about wanting to be that pillar for your family and friends, and also the own personal struggles you battle through. I was wondering if you had any advice for us on how we balance looking after ourselves and looking after those and helping out those around us.
Yes, it's a really great point, and thanks for your question. You've probably heard of that analogy, the oxygen mask analogy, where when your oxygen mask comes down, they always say to put it to yourself first before helping out your kids and the people next to you. I think it's so important to take that in life. If you don't look after yourself, it's very hard to look after others. So I think it's important that you look after yourself first, physical health, mental health, and then you'll be better equipped to looking after others. And for me, that means over the years, finding things that you're really passionate about, things that kind of, you can really embrace. And whether that's gratitude journaling, which I really love doing. I don't know if people have tried gratitude journaling, but it's a great tool. Whether it's finding, taking my dogs for a walk and going to the park, but just trying to switch off and looking after yourself, you can then be equipped to looking after others. And I think over the years, I realized that not talking about what I was going through was doing more harm to my family and my loved ones, because they didn't know how to look after me, or they didn't know how I was going through. So as soon as I started opening up, as soon as I started talking about my feelings and letting them in on what I was going through, they felt like they could help me more. It's hard to help someone if you don't let them in on what you're going through. And like I said, with Are You OK Day tomorrow, it's a great initiative, it's a great day, but just asking the question, are you okay? It's the follow-up questions. What next? How can you continue those conversations? So for me, that's what it's all about. But like I said, looking after yourself first is so important. And also letting your family in. If you are struggling, if you are going through your own adversities, letting your family, friends, those closest to you, let them know what you're going through. Because if you flip that narrative and you've got someone in your life that you love, would you want them to tell you if they're struggling? Of course you would, right? So if you flip that, look at it the same way, letting them in on how you're going or what you're going through, they can then feel like they're best equipped to at least try and help you, at least just be there for you, if that kind of makes sense. But thanks for the question. Any other questions? Yes, mate.
Leach, part of Delta Squadron here. My question sort of towards the beginning of your journey when you found out about the testicular cancer. How did you sort of prepare yourself and sort of try and come to grips with how you're going to have those tough conversations with family and friends to get that support?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. Like I said, when I first got told, I told my family, but I didn't even tell a lot of my army mates. I didn't want that to define me, but I think I was so young, like 20, 21. I don't think I truly understood what I was going through, and I think that made it pretty difficult because I think I was a bit naive. But as I said just before, as soon as I started telling people and letting them in on what I was going through, they could understand more. And I remember even when I first told my my DO over at RMC, he got a little bit emotional, but I remember telling him and he just appreciated the fact that I was including him on what I was going through, and he could then help me and link me to the right resources in the army and get a compassionate, trip to go see family, all that sort of stuff. So I realized that you just can't keep that stuff to yourself. But it was pretty hard to hear when you're 21, when you think that you're bulletproof. But I think I was, pretty young and naive. It's like a lot of us in this room now, out of interest, who here is under 20 years of age? Just raise a hand. So it's majority of people here. So you can picture now, I guarantee it, you'll be going back to your rooms tonight thinking you're bulletproof, thinking you're young, thinking these things don't happen to you. And then when you're sort of confronted with these challenges, you're not really sure how to react to them. But no, thanks, mate. Is there any other questions? Yes, up there.
During the time you were struggling, if you had to pick the 3 most beneficial things that other people did during that time to make it easier for you, what would they be?
Really great question. He asked, when I was struggling, what were some of the 3 things or some of the things that other people did that helped me? I think the biggest one there, and it's at no fault to my mates who didn't reach out to me when I was going through difficult times, but there were some mates after a couple of years that I'd randomly run into, they'd say, "Matt, I'm so sorry I never reached out to you. I didn't know what to say." Now, it's such an important one because I guarantee it, at the time, when I got little messages from people I hadn't heard from in a while, just receiving messages of support does so much. So if you're sitting there and someone in your life, family, friends of friends are going through a difficult time, I really encourage you just to reach out to them. Even if you don't get a reply, just sending them a message of support. Because being on the other side of the receiving end, it does so much every time you get a little message, every time you open your phone up and you realize how nice is that they've taken the effort to send you a message. So that's the first thing, is actually not necessarily knowing what to say, but just reaching out for support if you know someone going through something. The second thing is also treating me like a normal human. I think it's a big one. Sometimes people tiptoe around it, and I get it can be confronting if you see me in hospital, I'm going through chemo or going through difficult times, but still having the banter, still having the chats. I love, talking about the Crows with my old man, talking some banter with my old mates. So once again, not just letting something like cancer or these adversity just control or dictate your whole life. I'm still Hugo. I've still got other passions and things I love doing. So it's really focusing on that. And the third one's probably, I guess, close to home. It's, people like Amber for me, or my closest family and friends. It's actually letting them know, how they can help. Because sometimes you don't know. So for me, it might be like, "Hey, Ams, I'm really feeling like a bloody facial in hospital." And she might give me a little facial or whatever it might be. But little things like that, letting them know how they can help, because I guarantee it, the closest people in your lives will jump up the opportunity. If you said, "Hey, this sounds random, but can I get some new Peter Alexander jammies?" And they can whiz out and go get you some new ones whilst you're in hospital, little things like that. So actually letting them know sometimes, because they can't just always assume. So they're probably the 3 things off the top of my head that I've found over the years, especially being in hospital, that's really helped me. Still being treated normal. Reaching out, even a simple text message, it helps. And then letting those closest to you, let them know actually, you know what, I could really do with this, or this could help. So hopefully that answered a bit of your question. Maybe we got time for 1 or 2 more. Yeah, mate.
I'm just wondering, what did you do personally for yourself to get through those tough times?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. And look, I must admit, when I was having those dark days, I wasn't doing much. And that's the honest truth. And that's where it got really bad. I wasn't doing much. But I spoke about gratitude journaling. I think it's easy to do gratitude journaling when life's gone to plan and you're kicking goals and life's great. What am I grateful for? Heaps of things. I'm bloody awesome. But when you're really struggling or when you're going through a bit of a difficult time in your life, that's when gratitude journaling becomes a lot harder. So I'd still try in hospital. When I was in hospital, I'd still try and gratitude journal. You know, Amber's seen me when I've been at my worst, my mental health's not great. Before bed, I'd be like, I need to do some gratitude journaling tonight. So I found that has helped. There's an app, which I'm not sure if any of you are aware of. It's called Calm app. There's Headspace, there's Calm, there's a few others. I really like Calm. It costs $70 or so, but I like the fact that you kind of have to commit to yourself to pay $70. And sometimes I say that to a few mates and they go, oh, $70, it's expensive. But that same mate will bloody go to the pub on the weekend in Sydney and get 3 beers that cost $70 and he's completely fine with that. But it's investing a bit in yourself, right? And so I find the Calm app's awesome. Every night before bed, Amber and I play this like relaxing little music thing to just kind of put us in a bit of a mindful state. It's also got a introduction to meditation. And I do this 30-day to mindfulness. It's 10 minutes a day, which is not a lot of time. Everyone in this room has 10 minutes they can give up. I know you're a bloody at ADFA and you're all busy, but you can probably get 10 minutes, I reckon. And it's literally 10 minutes. I put my noise-cancelling headphones on and he just talks you through a bit of mindfulness, a bit of deep breathing, a bit of breath work. It's pretty simple stuff, right? But every time I finish that, I feel better. Every time I go, geez, that feels good. 10 minutes of mindfulness. And the final thing, which I do, and I still do, I see a psychologist. I think sometimes psychologists have a bad reputation almost, that people go, oh, if you're seeing a psychologist, it's going to ruin your career, or, you know, you must be really unwell to be seeing a psychologist. Sure, when I started seeing one, I was probably a bit depressed. But now I regularly see a psychologist because for me, it's really keeping on top of my mental health. And Amber's heard me say it before. I've got a psychologist appointment at 4 o'clock on a Friday. And I go, shit, I really can't be bothered. I don't think I need to see her this afternoon. I go, nope, I'm going to go. Every time I go, every time I say that, I always leave feeling so much better. I've just like an hour's flown by. I've got new things to work on, new things that we talk about. And it just goes to show, even when you think that your mental health is thriving, you're doing pretty well, there are always things that you can keep improving on. And for me, I get so much out of a psychologist. So I do encourage you, if you've got access to psychologists, you can be feeling great. You can be pretty mentally healthy and still see a psychologist. I think in the ideal world, and I know there's shortages and all this sort of stuff, in the ideal world, every single person should see a psychologist, even if it's, 3 monthly, 6 monthly annual checkups with a psychologist. Just having someone to talk to, having someone to just go through life's ups and downs is bloody awesome. And for me, I do get a lot out of a psychologist. So there are 3 things that, off the top of my head, who asked that question, sorry? 3 things off the top of my head, mate, that have really helped me. So, and the other thing too, you've seen lots of photos with it. Unfortunately, Iggy's passed away in the last couple of years. He was a bloody legend. But Ernie, the dude with the beard, he's awesome. He's like essentially my own therapy dog. He's just the best dog in the world. And in fact, when I was in ICU last year, I was a bit out of it and this dog came through. Her name was Luna. I thought, am I fucking dreaming this? It was like a dog in ICU and I'm feeding her. She was a Delta dog, a therapy dog. I remember saying to Amber, when I eventually get out of hospital, I reckon Ernie will be perfect for that. So we did the training, we graduated. I was like the proud dad whilst he got his little hat. And then we did a few placements at St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, the palliative care ward, which is quite a special ward to go in. It's people at end of life. And I went in there with Ernie into the hospital and the smiles on people's faces. It's amazing what that did to me too. It's significant. And there was one older lady who had tears in her eyes every time she saw Ernie and she said, this is the highlight of my week. And she misses her dog and Ernie would come in, wag his tail, lick her hands. and you just know for that little 10 minutes you've made someone's day, week, and it's also really helps me. So I'm a big one for dog therapy. I know some of you might, whilst you're here, not have access to that, but yeah, I'm sure when you go home and you can see your family dogs, it's bloody awesome. Maybe we'll do one more question. I'm mindful of time. Yes, mate.
If you think there's anything we can do individually or collectively to support the work you do or any other work you think is important?
Mate, I love that question. It's a really good one to finish on. Look, I think the first thing is I don't come up here for a pat on the back. You're amazing, mate. You're so inspiring. I honestly do it because I want to try and make a bit of a difference. But I also know that I'm one person. But having this opportunity with 800 or so people in this room, even if 10% from tonight take a few things away, and if you say how you can help, well, you can help by spreading these messages. When you go home before bed tonight, give someone a call that you haven't spoken to in a while. We all get bad at putting that off. Just give them a call and say, I heard this guy talk tonight. I just wanted to let you know I love you, or it's been too long. Connect with someone. Use this as an opportunity to continue these conversations. Are you okay day tomorrow? Reach out to some mates you haven't heard from in a while. Because like I said, I'm one person. I can only do so much. But if each and every one of you reach out to one person tonight or tomorrow for Are You Okay Day, there's that ripple effect. You just never know what someone's going through and whose life you can impact. So that's the real key, I think, with that. You can help by starting with you, by leaving here. And I tell you right now, it feels bloody awesome when you reach out to someone or you do something good or you do some good for other people. It makes you feel good too. And if we all do that in this world, I think we're going to go a long way. So that's probably the best thing I'd love each and every one of you to do. The only other thing, if you want to find out more with 25 Stay Alive, feel free to visit the website. Hopefully in the coming years, there's some more traction with some initiatives I've got in place with the government. And like I said, if you want to reach out to me directly and just say g'day, I'll absolutely make sure I take the time to speak to each and every one of you if need be. But once again, really do appreciate your time. Hopefully you have a great rest of your evening. And yeah, who knows, maybe cross paths down the track in our military careers. But thank you again, ladies and gents. Appreciate it.
It's really high and I'm really short. Thank you. We really, really appreciate you sharing some really tough challenges, but with such great humour and also honesty. And I think it's really reminded all of us of the need to not only look after ourselves, but also each other. So thank you for this evening. Thank you for everyone for being here, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Do you think, just actually before you all quickly run off, because it's a bloody great view from here, do you think I could like stand here and maybe just, where's the photo, and just get a photo of whilst I'm here? You don't get this opportunity often, right? So everyone, buddy, put your smiling faces on. And good. Perfect. All right, everyone, let's put our little smiling faces on. It's been a good chat, you know, pretend you enjoyed it. That'd be great. 3, 2, 1. Yep. All right, now I just want a 1, 2, 3, real or fake, all right? Ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, real or fake? Awesome. One more, hang on. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, mate. Cheers.